Dogs are bad.
Mr. Mackey.
Which one of you nasty monkeys? Welcome back to Under Oath. Two attorneys arguing. Now, sometimes we argue, sometimes we don't. We'll see how this one flies. Kansas City,
sometimes
Missouri.
you're reasonable and sometimes you're not. That's the precursor to whether or not we argue, really.
Kansas City, Missouri. I'm sure you've heard this. A lot of our audience has heard this. 4 guys in a house having a good time. 3 days later, all these 4 guys are missing. You know, they haven't showed up at work. Their families don't know where they are. The cops come to the house, knock on the door, have to knock a couple times. Guy comes, a homeowner was asleep on the couch, drags his ass to the door. The cops go, "Hey, where are the other guys?" He goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." He goes, "You mind if we search the place?" He goes, "Not at all." They find the other 3 guys dead in the backyard, frozen to death.
My God.
People are calling this guy a murderer. You killed these people. We don't know what's going on. You're a killer. You're a killer. And they're really, trying to get this guy arrested. The police have decided that there was no homicide.
Well, okay. So maybe they decided that they can't prove that he intentionally killed them.
You know why?
Why?
They find drugs.
Of course.
In all their systems.
Yeah.
Cocaine and fentanyl.
Well, this guy, hold on. So this guy's passed out in his house for 4 days?
2-3 days, yeah. 2-3 days, yeah.
So he must have been out of his mind on drugs.
And the other 3 guys somehow just went to the backyard and allowed themselves to freeze to death.
Well, maybe they all went out there to smoke or something. I don't know.
Cocaine and fentanyl. You don't smoke cocaine.
Yeah,
well, you smoke crack.
Yeah.
No, crack is different than cocaine.
Oh,
as Whitney Houston said, crack is whack. She could afford cocaine. Remember?
I don't remember. But I'll take
that was the greatest line ever. Crack is whack.
I'll take your word for it.
I was like, could you imagine one of the greatest entertainers on the planet drops the line, crack is whack? I do cocaine.
So I don't understand. How did they get outside? They must have all voluntarily gone outside.
They were probably all hanging outside.
Right. And
now,
so
the family wants this guy prosecuted. They want to sue the guy. They want to do all this. He wants to sue them because of all the statements they're making. And in the end, you got 4 people doing cocaine. They might have known the fentanyl was in it. They might not have known it.
All right. Well, from an attorney standpoint, if you're trying to sue the insurance company for the homeowner's insurance, that's going to be kind of tough because what's the defense if I'm the insurance company? If I'm the lawyer for the insurance company, I'm going to say, listen, our policy doesn't cover drug use. We do not cover things that happen because of illegal activity within the house. You can't even buy insurance for that. I can't buy insurance for, hey, if somebody ODs in my house on the cocaine I give them, I need you to cover that. That's not a thing you can buy. So they're barking up the wrong tree if they think they're going to get some kind of insurance payout. So there's really no reason for them to try and make that story fly. They need to realize their family members are drug addicts, and this is what happens to drug addicts sometimes.
Now, the weird thing, you say addicts,
they froze to death.
That's because they overdosed on fentanyl. Who bought the cocaine is always going to come up.
Yeah, and one of the guys who showed up at the party could have been his cocaine.
I mean, technically, he doesn't have to say anything.
Not on a criminal case.
And the police have already said.
And if he was smart, he wouldn't.
And the police have already said they're not trying to charge the guy. So I mean, what are their options? What are the family's options?
They really don't have any. I mean,
what if
they don't have any.
What if they just want
options?
the truth? What if they just want the truth?
Well, the guy who's remaining probably can't tell him the truth. He didn't even know the people were in his backyard.
Where'd the cocaine come from?
Well, he's not in his best interest to answer that question.
It's not best interest, but what if I sue you and I force you to be deposed?
Yeah, we can say I can be prosecuted.
Remember what happened to our boy Bill Cosby?
Cosby, yeah.
And what if the prosecutor? What if the prosecutor walks over and says, "Yeah"?
Well, that worked until the judge said, "No, you have to testify," and because you've been given prosecutorial immunity.
You think they would do that?
They did it in the Cosby case because they were hoping that the women would get some sort of relief, that he couldn't hide behind the fact that he committed a crime, that it would open himself up to civil liability, money, in other words.
Are you worried about a local judge going off
But this isn't going to open up anybody to money. Even if a judge makes him testify, the insurance company is still not going to be responsible for the result of illegal activity within the house.
If you're the family and you have, let's say you have a couple $1,000, you want to spend like $5,000-$10,000 to find out what really happened. And you pay the attorney and say, listen, just write this. I just want this person deposed.
Yeah, I think he still shows up and says, plead the fifth, not going to answer these questions. And then there's your $5,000 or $10,000. That's just, now you're making even more poor decisions. Your family members already made the worst possible decision they could make, and now you're just throwing money away.
Now there's an argument.
Chalk this up to drugs are bad. You do it better than I do.
Drugs are bad.
Mr. Mackey.
Which one of you nasty monkeys took a dookie?
I remember that
dragon. Okay, I'm sorry. I love that guy. I love that dude.
You do that voice pretty good though.
I love that dude. Which one you win? That whole episode is the best.
Family members, listen, grow up. Your family members were using drugs. That happens sometimes.
It's a sad scenario because you have them calling this guy a murderer. You have them calling him a killer. You have them call they're making some pretty bad things. It's making life difficult for him in the community. You know, the argument is that he says, and here's what
the drug addict who was passed out for 4 days.
But they're calling him a murderer. That's not the same.
There was 3 dead bodies in his backyard.
But I'm not a murderer. We were all doing drugs.
He's a killer.
I'm the one who lived.
He's a killer.
He's not a killer.
He's
not because he partakes with him.
Yeah.
Why?
Because they were all committing felonies together.
So you're saying it's felony murder? Felony murder.
Felony murder. I just found a way for the police to prosecute that guy.
I don't think so.
Felony murder. They're all doing drugs together.
They all died of exposure.
Yeah, because they passed out because of the drugs they were using.
So you think there's for those who don't know, felony murder is the definition of when in the commission of a felony, somebody dies, and it could be a co-conspirator, it could be somebody who's committing the act with you. So it could be somebody who's trying to stop it. You know, that's what felony murder is.
If you light the house on fire and the police and the firemen die on the way, that is traditionally what felony murder is. It can also be used, like Jeff just said, for the guys that you're with. You rob a bank with 2 other guys. One of the security guards in the bank pulls a gun, fires, kills one of your buddies. You're responsible for murder.
Now, what's being happened now is both parties, you know, the relatives and the homeowner. The relatives want to sue him for wrongful death. He wants to sue them for defamation.
Well, he can't sue him for defamation because he's at least guilty of felony murder, and he'd have to.
No. If they call him a killer or a murderer, and in the scenario, let's say one of the people brought the drugs to the party.
Mm-hmm.
He partook in the drugs, but he didn't give the other people drugs. He used the drugs that, let's say, Willie. We don't even know. Let's say Willie, one of the guys' name is Willie.
I'm saying technically he can use the word murderer because it's a felony murder because he was participating in the felony. That would be enough probably to get a judge to toss that case out.
It's tight.
A judge wouldn't want to hear that case, though. He'd throw it out on that basis, I bet.
Now, what about the wrongful death claim?
Again, yeah, bring the wrongful death claim, but you're not going to get insurance proceeds. What's this guy got? Does he have assets? Maybe you want to get judgment against him because, God forbid, he wins the Powerball and you didn't get the judgment against him. You'd be kicking yourself, but what's the chance of that happening?
I don't know. It's a weird thing when, you know, the whole issue is that the guy was knocked out on the couch himself for 2 days. Supposedly, he came back inside. That's what he says. I remember walking back inside. So they're all hanging out doing whatever outside maybe. Or supposedly fentanyl makes you really hot. And they went outside to cool down.
And they cooled down to the point where they turned into popsicles.
Listen, fentanyl is brutal. I mean, fentanyl is...
Is it that powerful that it stops you from realizing that what you're experiencing is dangerous to your body?
Walking dead. That's what fentanyl's doing. If you ever see these videos I actually saw it in San Diego when I was there. People are standing straight up with their head over, passed out while standing. They can't move. They can't do this. Fentanyl is the worst drug I think we've ever experienced in history.
And they found at least traces of that in each of the 3 guys that were frozen?
In Florida alone, they found out that a significant portion of the cocaine out there is laced with fentanyl. It's a cheap drug. It's cut into it to give you the same effects, but supposedly it's 20 to 50 times stronger.
So isn't that common knowledge for people who use drugs regularly?
If I'm an expert cocaine user, maybe, but cocaine is still expensive.
Do you have to ask for the fentanyl to be added? Is it more expensive if it's laced with fentanyl?
I don't think anybody outside of a drug addict or somebody who is really messed up asks for fentanyl. Nobody knows. It's like going crack. Let me do some crack. It was cheap and everything else, but fentanyl is bad. I mean, it is bad. If you're on it, you are. I would say it's like meth. It's as bad as being on meth and even worse.
That's terrible.
Yeah. So that's what we're dealing with now, and it's a shame.
Well, and no one's feeling sorry for the guy who hosted this party, right? I mean,
because he lived.
Yeah, no one's feeling bad for him.
You can't be mad. You can't feel bad. You can't hate the people who died. That's the way it works. It's the survivor.
I'm not saying anybody should
It's
hate
the last
people that
living
died.
criminal. For example, when a crime gets committed, three guys walk into a bank. One guy lives, the other two get died. Nobody feels bad for the two guys who died. Oh, well, let's hold a vigil. Nobody's holding a vigil for criminals. And the fact was that these people died, so they've already been punished. The guy who lived, they look at he hasn't been punished yet. In the end, you think he'll fail in his defamation suit, though, right? Because your argument felony murder.
Yeah, I think technically you could say the word murder when you describe him because technically he's guilty of felony murder.
Do you think a judge would grant summary judgment on that one, meaning that the judge wouldn't even let it go to the jury?
Probably.
I'm on the other end of it. I don't believe so. I think it's a fact issue.
Yeah.
I think the jury's going to have to determine if he committed felony murder before he's called a murderer. So I think in the end, I think it's going to go to a jury, and it depends on what those 6 people will think.